Introverts and extroverts are not simply behaving differently because of personality quirks. They actually process rewards in different ways, and understanding that can make your own reactions feel a lot more logical and a lot less like something you need to fix. When we use the word reward, we are not talking about the stickers or gold stars you might remember from childhood. In adult life, rewards come in the form of money, recognition, new connections, romantic interest, and the excitement that comes from engaging in stimulating activities. If you are more extroverted, your brain reacts strongly to these rewards. It gives you a gentle nudge forward, an internal sense of energy that says, "This is something worth pursuing." That response makes social situations feel motivating and satisfying. But if you lean toward introversion, your brain does not push you in the same way. The same reward that feels exciting to an extrovert may feel muted or even a little flat to you. It is not that you cannot appreciate good experiences. It is simply that they do not hit your internal reward system with the same force. You might think of it like tasting a meal that is technically fine, but not something that sparks enthusiasm. You can eat it, but it does not energize you. This difference becomes even more noticeable in environments filled with stimulation. A loud party or a crowded bar might seem like a place where possibilities are everywhere. You could meet new people, strengthen existing relationships, or enjoy a sense of belonging. That is how an extroverted brain tends to interpret those situations. But if you are introverted, the same environment may feel like too much input at once. Instead of seeing opportunities, you might feel the rising cost of effort, the mental load it takes to manage noise, movement, and constant interaction. It is easy to assume there is something wrong with you when these settings feel overwhelming. But what is happening is simply your brain signaling that the level of stimulation is exceeding what feels comfortable. So when you find yourself pulled toward quieter environments or smaller, more meaningful interactions, it is not a sign of weakness or avoidance. It is a natural response tied to the way your reward system is built. Imagine you walk into a lively house party. The music is loud, the room is full, and there are conversations happening in every corner. For some people, that level of stimulation immediately feels exciting. Our extroverted friend is a good example. The moment he steps through the door, his attention goes straight to the possibilities around him. He sees opportunities to meet someone new, reconnect with people he already knows, and maybe strengthen his place within the social group. Even though a night like this takes energy, his brain interprets the environment as rewarding, so it encourages him to stay engaged. He stays late, he pushes through the tiredness, and although he pays for it the next morning, he still feels satisfied because the experience felt worth the effort. Now let's shift our attention to someone else in that same room. If you look around, you might notice someone standing a little closer to the wall, taking in the scene before deciding whether to join it. That person represents the introverted experience. He is not indifferent to connection. He wants companionship, friendship, maybe even the hope of something romantic. But the environment itself is overwhelming. The noise feels too loud. The conversations overlap until they blur together, and his mind quickly reaches a point where the input is simply too much. Instead of seeing opportunities, he sees the amount of energy it would require just to participate. So he listens to what his body and mind are telling him, and he leaves early. The moment he walks through his own front door, he feels a sense of relief. A quiet movie with a roommate, or a few gentle text messages to someone he cares about, feels far more manageable and far more meaningful. His desire for connection has not disappeared. The environment at the party simply demanded more energy than it returned. This difference is not about preference alone. It is rooted in the chemistry of the brain. The introverted system becomes overstimulated more easily, which means certain environments drain rather than energize. Understanding this pattern helps you recognize that when you step away from a situation like the party, you are not avoiding life. You are responding to the way your nervous system is built, and that response is both natural and healthy. Dopamine plays a much larger role in introversion and extroversion than most people realize. You may have heard it described as the feel-good chemical, but that is not actually its main function. Dopamine is about motivation. It is the signal in your brain that draws your attention to something rewarding and tells you that it is worth pursuing. It is the internal voice that says, "This is important, move toward it." Extroverts tend to have a more active dopamine reward system. Their brains respond strongly when a potential reward appears, which means they feel more energized and more driven to engage in stimulating experiences. Dopamine even lowers their sense of how much effort an activity requires. So when an extrovert walks into a lively social situation, the brain helps them push through the natural fatigue that comes with constant interaction. Introverts respond differently. They are more sensitive to dopamine, which means they reach a state of overload much more quickly. What feels pleasantly stimulating to an extrovert can feel overwhelming to an introvert. Instead of motivation, they experience a sense of being flooded. That is why introverts often describe feeling mentally foggy or drained after too much interaction. Many people jokingly call it an introvert hangover, and the name fits. It is not about disliking people. It is a biological response to excess stimulation. When you understand this, you can see why two people in the same environment might walk away with completely different levels of energy. One leaves feeling exhilarated, the other depleted. Both may have enjoyed the moment, but their brains handled the experience through very different pathways. This difference is not a flaw in either direction. It is simply how each nervous system is built. There is another piece of the puzzle that helps explain why alone time feels so restorative for introverts. And it comes from the work of Dr. Marty Olson-Laney, the author of The Introvert Advantage. She points out that introverts often rely more heavily on a different neurochemical system altogether, one centered around acetylcholine. While dopamine pushes us toward external rewards and stimulation, acetylcholine supports a completely different kind of internal experience. It promotes deep thinking, calm, sustained focus, long-term memory, and a quiet sense of contentment that comes from meaningful, inward-directed activity. This is why certain moments feel uniquely satisfying for introverts. When you are reading, writing, engaging with a hobby, allowing your mind to wander, or simply sitting in quiet reflection, your brain is tapping into that acetylcholine pathway. The calm you feel is not imagined. It is a real physiological response that helps you settle, recharge, and return to yourself. For an introvert, this pathway is not just pleasant. It is essential. It explains why solitude feels nourishing rather than lonely, why your energy returns when the world goes quiet, and why you are often at your best when you have the space to think deeply or immerse yourself in something meaningful. Alone time is not an escape from life. It is the environment your nervous system uses to restore balance. It is the place where your strengths have room to grow. There is one more study that offers a helpful clue about why introverts and extroverts respond so differently to social environments. In this study, researchers showed participants a series of images while measuring their brain activity. Some of the images were of objects and some were of human faces. What they found was striking. Extroverts showed a strong neurological response when they looked at faces. Their brains reacted quickly and with intensity, which tells us that people themselves are inherently interesting and rewarding to them. Introverts, on the other hand, showed that same kind of response more often when they were looking at objects rather than faces. This does not mean that introverts dislike people or want nothing to do with them. That interpretation would be far too simplistic. What the study really highlights is a pattern we have seen repeatedly through different kinds of research. Extroverts are wired to place greater value on social rewards. They notice them more quickly and feel more motivated to pursue them. Introverts notice them too, but the motivation to chase them is not as strong, and the stimulation required to obtain them often comes at a higher cost. Both of these responses are normal and healthy. They reflect the natural variability of the human brain rather than a right way or a wrong way to interact with the world. Understanding this helps take away the pressure to behave like someone you are not. Your brain simply prioritizes different kinds of information, and that difference is perfectly valid. With all of this in mind, it becomes much easier to understand what is happening when an introvert leaves early, turns down an invitation, or simply needs a quiet night at home. These moments are not rejections. They are not expressions of disinterest in the people around them. They are responses to an internal system that has reached its limit. When an introvert steps back, they are protecting their energy and giving their nervous system the space it needs to settle. They are honoring the biology that governs how they function, think, and regain balance. When you view it through that lens, solitude becomes something very different from avoidance. It is a form of maintenance that allows the introvert brain to reset and operate at its best. For many introverts, myself included, that often means evenings spent at home, maybe with a book, maybe with a familiar show, and always with enough quiet to let the mind breathe again. That sense of space is not empty. It is restorative. It is the place where clarity returns, where emotional steadiness rebuilds, and where strength quietly grows.